good morning. I would like to welcome you to the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative Regional Tribal Engagement Session. As the session gets underway, I would like to let you know that we will be recording today's event. The recording along with the presentation will be shared following the session. And while this is the third of the 3 engagement sessions, the project level engagement and communication will be continuing, and we really appreciate your joining us this morning. Next slide. Over the course of today's session, we're going to be providing information about the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative, which is being led by the California Department of Transportation, and today we'll include an overview of Broadband for All. We will have an overview of the Middle Mile Broadband of the project. We will discuss the project delivery, the environmental and cultural focus, as well as a last mile connections overview. On the agenda, you'll note that it does have Q&A at the bottom. However, I will say we have also built in Q&A throughout the session after each of the presentations. So please don't feel that you will need to wait until the end. One quick housekeeping and logistics. I just would like to remind panelists or presenters and our participants to please be sure you're muted if you're not speaking. If you have questions, we ask that if you are able, I know some folks are able to see the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Some folks have not been able to see that. So if you're able to see it, you're welcome to post your questions in that Q&A and use that feature. Otherwise, please raise your hand and we will be happy to call on you and so that you can ask your question. With that, we will go ahead and start with our opening remarks. We're pleased to be joined by the Secretary of the Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs, the Director of the California Department of Technology, the Chief Deputy Director of the California Department of Technology, the Director of the California Department of Transportation, or Caltrans, and the Executive Director of the California Public Utilities Commission. To begin this morning's session, I would like to introduce Secretary Christina Snyder with the Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs. Secretary Snyder.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today to learn more about the state's Middle Mile Broadband Initiative and how tribes can effectively engage in these processes. Again, my name is Christina Snyder, and I'm a member of the Dry Creek Rancheria Band of Pomo Indians in Sonoma County and the Tribal Affairs Secretary for Governor Gavin Newsom, where I lead the Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs. I'm joining you here today from the ancestral homelands of the Patwin peoples. The Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs informs the work of the administration by coordinating and facilitating government-to-government communication and consultation with the 109 tribal governments in California, each of which have diverse needs and priorities, and many of which are situated in historically underserved areas for broadband and infrastructure. Because of the unique challenges California tribal nations and citizens face in accessing sufficient broadband to meet the growing demands of a more internet-based society, economy, and community care network, the office is also a member of the California Broadband Council on the state's Broadband for All efforts to help inform the work as they pursue digital equity across California. The Newsom administration and the state's Broadband for All program is committed to collaborating with tribal nations to address connectivity and digital equity needs in tribal lands and Indian country across California. This has been a foundation of Broadband for All. Our office has worked closely with the Broadband Council to establish the state's California Tribal Broadband Connectivity Partnership Summit and the Tribal Broadband for All Roundtable in May 2022. Working closely with CDT, CPUC, and other state agencies over this next year and beyond to ensure that the state's Broadband for All program and the state's digital equity plan are closely aligned, sensitive to, and developed in collaboration and partnership with tribal nations to address digital equity needs. With that in mind, I encourage you to engage freely with the state folks present and follow up as needed to better understand not only how your nation or community might benefit from the Middle Mile build-out, but also to inform the state of how to properly, respectfully, and equitably engage with their tribal government to ensure we're fully living up to our commitment to work in a mutually collaborative manner with every tribe in the state. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing more about your needs and priorities in this process as we move through today's agenda. And I will hand it off to Chief Deputy Director Johnson.
Thank you, Secretary Snyder, and good morning. My name is Jared Johnson, Chief Deputy Director of the California Department of Technology. I'm honored to participate in today's Middle Mile Broadband Tribal Engagement event. 28% of tribal lands do not have modern broadband services of 100 megabits per second, and millions lack connectivity, devices, and skills necessary to access essential services and realize other social and economic benefits. Broadband for All is Governor Newsom's commitment to closing the digital divide and bringing internet services to unserved and underserved homes, businesses, and community institutions in our tribal communities and across the state. In June 2021, Governor Gavin Newsom signed Senate Bill 156 into law to construct the open access middle mile broadband network. This infrastructure is needed by internet service providers to run connection to homes and businesses. CDT and our partners have worked at breakneck speed to deliver a list of firsts on a short timeline. The committee first met in August 2021. Our first 18 middle mile locations were announced in November 2021, and a full statewide network map was released in June 2022. This past October, we installed the first middle mile fiber in Poway, California. The pace has not slowed. We have the entire system out to bid for proposals from industry for different methods of implementation. And this January, we expect to make decisions on construction and lease implementations. Beside updates on our middle mile, today you'll receive more information on our statewide digital equity planning process that will help our state determine the best use of federal dollars to expand access, affordability, adoption, and digital equity and inclusion. We extend our partnership and look forward to collaborating with tribal nations to ensure that the state's digital equity plan aligns with the needs of the tribal communities. Representatives of CPUC and Caltrans will discuss these last mile and middle mile efforts. And now I'd like to welcome Director Tony Tavares of Caltrans.
Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate the comments from Secretary Snyder, and thank you, Chief Deputy Johnson, for your comments as well. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tony Tavares. I'm the Director of the California Department of Transportation. We're also known as Caltrans, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you this morning to the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative Regional Tribal Engagement Session. I know your time is extremely valuable, and we are extremely grateful for your participation. The digital divide and the resulting inequities have been a focus for decades and a challenge we have long worked to close. This effort became even more critical as the COVID-19 pandemic reinforced our reliance on high-speed internet, while also further highlighting the lack of equity in access to broadband throughout our entire state. Through the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative, we are prioritizing bringing reliable, high-speed internet service to disadvantaged and underserved communities. We're proud to support the California Department of Technology's efforts to create the physical infrastructure needed to enable internet connectivity for homes, businesses, and community institutions throughout the state of California, such as schools, libraries, hospitals, and medical facilities. Once fully constructed, the Middle Mile Broadband Network will serve as the backbone infrastructure to bring high-speed internet to as many Californians as possible. This initiative is a significant and ambitious statewide undertaking, as we have a very short amount of time to fully construct the entire network. Caltrans has been tasked to deliver this Middle Mile Broadband Network along key corridors of the state highway system under the direction and oversight of the California Department of Technology. This means that Caltrans is responsible for completion of all project level environmental studies, compliance documentation, design, and construction of this broadband network in all 12 of our Caltrans districts. And for these projects, our districts will continue outreach to culturally affiliated tribal governments for project level consultations. And I would like to say some tribal governments have already been in communication with our districts. We continue to appreciate your your engagement with us, and your continued dialogue with us. With respect to broadband, many tribal areas and households do not reliably have download internet speeds of at least 25 megabits per second and upload internet speeds of at least 3 megabytes per second. According to the California Public Utilities Commission, 25% of Californians who are unserved are within 10 miles of federally recognized tribal lands. Caltrans looks forward to our continued collaboration with our tribal cultural leaders through early coordination, engagement, and consultation to promote the protection of tribal heritage and meaningful historic preservation outcomes. We recognize the best project solutions only happen when strong tribal, regional, and local government relationships are maintained to allow us to leverage everyone's input, ideas, and resources. Our goal is that meetings like this and regular communication and coordination with our Caltrans tribal relations staff will allow us to work collaboratively to best consider and address the needs of tribal nations. Again, we appreciate the opportunity to share more with you about the Broadband Middle Mile Initiative and how we can engage each other on this important endeavor. We know there may be a number of questions and potential challenges, but we see the vital role broadband plays in our lives and the value in what we are doing. With school, work, and healthcare increasingly or completely available online, the ability for people to access and use broadband is the difference between being able to fully engage in life or being cut off. While Caltrans is typically about roads and highways, we are about people and ultimately about connecting people. And that is what the Broadband Middle Mile Initiative is all about. Connecting communities, connecting people, bringing opportunities for economic prosperity to all Californians. We look forward to enhancing our partnership with each of you and engaging in the collaboration with all of our tribal governments. I want to thank you all again for being with us this morning and the opportunity to speak with you. And now I would like to turn this over to the Executive Director of the California Public Utilities Commission, Ms. Rachel Peterson.
Good morning. Thank you, Secretary Snyder, first Chief Deputy Director Johnson, and Director Tavares for the invitation to join you. And hello to all of the tribal representatives who have also joined us today. I am very pleased to be here in support of the partnership between the statewide Middle Mile Project and our Last Mile programs. We are working to bring this once-in-a-generation funding to California to build internet infrastructure. I'm Rachel Peterson, Executive Director of the California Public Utilities Commission. Our agency's mission is to regulate utilities so that people across California have access to clean, affordable, reliable utility services. The CPUC has a broad portfolio in energy policy and regulation, in safety, water, transportation, and importantly, in communications. The Last Mile and other programs that directly impact your lives in Indian country are some of the programs I'll talk about later on in the program. Thank you for coming today to hear about the initiatives. The pandemic truly ended the debate about whether broadband is a necessity, and nowhere has that been more clear than where you are. The state legislature and the governor enacted Senate Bill 156 in 2021, which alongside the $3.2 billion for Middle Mile, also invested over $2.75 billion for Last Mile programs. These new programs have an emphasis on empowering tribes and local governments to solve the digital divide. We think that helping your initiatives and supporting your partnerships is critical to getting people connected in areas of the state where traditional internet service providers won't go and where mobile coverage is not so good. Our programs are designed to help you get there, and I hope you'll be able to tune in through the program for the Last Mile discussion at the end. Thank you for your time, for being with us here today, and we look forward to our continued work with you. Thank you, and back to you, Adriana.
Thank you, Executive Director Peterson. Next slide, please. We are also joined today by the district directors for the central portion of the state. And they have some opening remarks as well. We will be hearing from Richard Rosales, who's the District 5 Director, Diana Gomez, the District 6 Director, Ryan Dermody, the District 9 Director, Dennis Agar, the District 10 Director. And with that, I will hand it over to Richard.
Thank you. I'm Richard Rosales. I'm the Caltrans Interim District 5 Director, headquarters out of San Luis Obispo. Just so you know, my other job when I'm not going to be the interim director is the Deputy District Director for Program Project Management. So I will be directly involved with this Middle Mile Broadband Initiative throughout the whole process. District 5 covers 5 counties: Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, Monterey, Santa Cruz, and San Benito counties. Happy to be here today for this discussion on the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative, tasked with bringing broadband services to those areas which either do not have the services or have unreliable services. And your participation and collaboration is needed to ensure the success of this implementation. Our goal is for avoidance when we're in our process for our design process. And we have already have outreached some of the tribes and have corresponded with those, and we're looking forward to that continued collaboration. We have about 680 miles in our district of the 10,000 miles statewide, and we're looking forward to engaging and being successful in that implementation. Thank you.
And thank you. And District Director Gomez.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you everyone for being here today. So I'm Diana Gomez, District 6 Director. District 6 covers Kings County, Tulare County, Madera County, Kern County, and Fresno County. And so as you know, as the previous speakers talked about, what is our project and ensuring that we have broadband service and throughout the state. So currently in District 6, there's 996 miles that is being proposed within the 5 counties. Within District 6, there are 18 federally recognized tribes. Since July of last year, we have reached out to 42 tribal representatives that are listed in our contact list, and we have been notifying them of the broadband projects. The initial outreach we did was an invitation to consult and share cultural resources information. We also have a map that we provided for each project, and have been mailing that to the tribal representatives. So we're in the projects in District 6, we do have a minimal impact to the tribal government land. One small area, which is on State Route 41 near the Chichansi Casino. And then a second one, which is along State Route 190 in Tulare County. And that's operated by the Tule River tribe. So we will continue to reach out and partner with our partners within the respective tribes. We will be doing some cultural studies, you know, as part of the project. And again, we will continue to consult as we continue to move forward with these projects. Thank you.
Thank you. And District Director Dermody.
Hi, thanks. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ryan Dermody, the Caltrans District Director for District 9. We cover Eastern Kern, Inyo, and Mono counties. I'm joined today on the call as well with Kirsten Helton, the District 9 Deputy District Director for Planning and Environmental, Christina McDonald, our District Native American Coordinator, and Emily Mullen, District Native American Liaison. And I know a lot of you have worked closely with those team members on a lot of the projects we work on regularly. So in District 9, we have over 700 miles within Kern, Inyo, and Mono counties for the broadband project. Nearly half of those miles fall within the Bureau of Land Management, National Park Service, or Forest Service, or other federal lands. So we're working closely not only with our tribal partners, but also our federal land management partners. A small percentage of those projects do fall within tribal lands. And we've already begun outreach and consultation with 20 tribes with potential interest within our district boundaries. We've already sent out the introductory letters, and I know some of those conversations are occurring as we speak. I also want to mention that we're actively consulting with 2 tribes right now on some of our current projects, and as we get into Inyo and Mono, we will continue that process. We're hoping for good communication, as we feel we've done on other transportation projects, and we will do on this broadband project. And as coming phases and future phases occur, we're looking forward to that collaboration and consultation with all of you. We have good relationships with the resource land management agencies, and we're hoping to really minimize impacts to all environmental resources. We know that broadband has a small footprint. It's going to go along existing corridors, so avoid first and minimize and mitigate as our third option. So thank you all for being here today. We appreciate that. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Director Agar, District Director Agar.
Thank you, Adriana. Yes, Dennis Agar, Caltrans District 10 Director, based in Stockton. We're located along the Central California, and we have 8 counties that we represent. That includes Alpine, Amador, Calaveras, Mariposa, Merced, San Joaquin, Stanislaus, and Tuolumne counties. Our district is tasked to deliver over 800 miles of broadband network in our different counties. And we do also appreciate our tribal partners being here today and in coordination with our effort. We do recognize that our broadband middle mile projects do lie on ancestral Native American territories. And we are also committed to working with all of our partners to ensure that our construction and design of these broadband middle mile projects really is minimized and avoids any impacts to cultural and natural resources. We have also continued and started our outreach to at least 19 tribal representatives throughout our district. And again, I really do want to work with our team here to work with all of you in regards to meaningful engagement and collaboration to really strengthen our partnerships and our communication as we go through this very important effort and this initiative. Also joining me today is Christine Hallisey. Kristen is my Deputy District Director for Environmental and Right-of-Way. And of course, her and her team really look forward to, again, working with all our tribal partners in our 8 counties. Thank you, and back to you, Adriana.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody, all of the executive leadership across our districts, across the state, who are able to join us this morning. And I think we will move forward with the agenda and jump into the presentations. With that, I would like to hand it off to the Deputy Director for Broadband and Digital Literacy with the California Department of Technology, Scott Adams, who will provide an overview of Broadband for All.
Thank you so much, Adriana. And I want to extend my thanks to Secretary Snyder, Chief Deputy Director Johnson, Executive Director Peterson, and the Caltrans directors. Also want to welcome our Tribal Nation partners and just extend our thanks, our gratitude, and our commitment to working in partnership with you on Broadband for All and connectivity and digital equity needs in your communities and on tribal lands. As Adriana said, my name is Scott Adams. I'm the Deputy Director of Broadband and Digital Literacy within the Department of Technology, and our office works to coordinate the implementation of the various Broadband for All initiatives with the California Broadband Council and a number of state agencies charged with leading those efforts, and then ensuring coordination and collaboration with our tribal partners and local and regional entities. Could you change the next slide, please? So in terms of Broadband for All, the why, the executives before had really called it out, that in today's technology and internet-centric world, the ability to access and use broadband is the difference between being able to fully engage in life and being cut off. Next slide, please. And so as stated before, Broadband for All is the Newsom administration and the state of California's overarching commitment to close the digital divide and really focus on four main components: access, making sure that there is robust and reliable infrastructure, both on the middle mile and then on the last mile network side to provide connectivity and service, affordability, making sure that doing what we can to make the service affordable, adoption, that we take measures and develop programs and partnerships to increase adoption of technology, both home internet service, but the computers required to maximize and optimize what is on the internet. And then lastly, digital literacy training, which leads to inclusion. So creating pathways so that our residents in California and on tribal lands have the skills they need to access essential service and other social and economic benefits. Next slide. This slide here, the previous speakers have talked about the evolution of Broadband for All, but we wanted to give you a visualization here. California has been committed to closing the digital divide since 2010, when we established the California Broadband Council, which is a 12-entity body consisting of 9 state agencies, another entity, and representatives from the state Senate and Assembly. And pleased to note that the Office of Tribal Affairs, Caltrans, or the California Transportation Agency and the Public Utilities Commission, as well as CDT, are members of that body. Their work was really charged with coordinating the statewide efforts to promote broadband adoption and deployment in underserved communities, as determined by the California Public Utilities Commission. As the previous speakers had noted, that really in response to the COVID pandemic, Governor Newsom issued a broadband executive order in 2020, which directed the California Broadband Council to refocus its efforts and really double down on closing the state's digital divide. That led to the development of the state's statewide broadband action plan in just 4 months during the pandemic, that was developed in partnership with over 700 entities. And you know, the next significant development was the historic Senate Bill 156, which previous speakers had mentioned. It's historic legislation that allocated $6 billion, bulk of which went to the Department of Technology to oversee the development of the statewide open access middle mile network, and then the $2.75 billion to the Public Utilities Commission to administer last mile grant programs that were talked about before. Last year, with the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, there were additional funds, over $65 billion in funds allocated at the federal government level to states and localities to continue their digital equity work. And this visualization just shows the 6 primary buckets that the state has been focusing on leveraging. Next slide. When we look at the goals of Broadband for All, there are really 3 primary goals, and that's that all you know, residents on tribal land in California have access to high-performance broadband available at homes, schools, libraries, and businesses, that they have access to affordable broadband and necessary devices, and access to training and support to enable digital inclusion. Next slide. Okay. And the message that I wanted to deliver you all about new investments that the state is leveraging, the Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act programs that were visualized in 2 slides before this. This coming year is going to include significant amount of planning on 2 programs: the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, or BEAD, which the Public Utilities Commission is leading, and then the Digital Equity Act programs. There's $2.75 billion available to states, and why these 2 programs are important here is that these come with state allocations. So California will receive its fair share of these dollars. And if we go to the next slide, I'll kind of explain how the process works. So on the BEAD plan, the Public Utilities Commission has to establish a 5-year action plan. On the digital equity dollars, the California the Department of Technology has to establish a statewide digital equity plan. Both of those plans are related and coordinated. So the Department of Technology and Public Utilities Commission over the next year are going to be engaging in a number of coordinated and aligned activities to seek public feedback. And so the planning process on the digital equity side is that we've established a statewide planning group to bring in umbrella entities. It's open to the public to really advise the Department of Technology on some of the key components that of the digital equity plan. We are developing outcome area working groups that will explore state outcomes and state policy priorities. So education, health, workforce development, digital inclusion. We do have a tribal collaboration working group. We would encourage our tribal nation partners to participate in, each of both the planning group and the outcome area working groups that are relevant, and really, share with us your subject matter expertise, your lived experiences, and work with us as we align the digital equity plan to really be sensitive to and responsive to the needs of you as our partners. A couple other things I want to mention: we are going to be doing a number of surveys, a statewide digital equity survey to identify needs of some specific covered populations that are outlined by the federal government that we consider. There'll be a traditional phone survey, an online survey that we would hope that to the extent it's possible in your communities, you would help us promote to really assess the needs of your residents. And then in addition to that, we know that there's a need to engage the Department of Technology and Public Utilities Commission are going to be conducting up to 20 local events across the state where we can meet with community members and partners and stakeholders to engage in bi-directional feedback on what should be included in the digital equity and BEAD plans. And so we would encourage you all to and invite you all to participate in those meetings. We intend to do much like this session, but in person, 3 convenings that are specific to tribal nations, 1 in the north, 1 in the central, and 1 in the south of the state. And then we're committed to ongoing public engagement, which is the 5th component of our planning. Next slide, please. The call to action that we have is really to demonstrate our commitment to partnership and collaboration and alignment and learning. We've provided a link here on this presentation that you will receive after this meeting. Up on the Broadband for All portal, there's a participation form. Please, if you can, fill it out and let us know how and where you would like to partner with the state on these really ambitious efforts. I am going to close now, but with my close, I want to say that while today's session is really to enhance understanding of the middle mile, we want to make sure that we place the middle mile under the context of broadband for all and all of the interdependent and complementary pieces that are going to help us get to the stated goals. We know this is a lot of information, and we're committed to continue to understand, how the state can, partner with you all and provide additional assistance and guidance or counsel on how to understand these programs, how to leverage them, and provide whatever support we can and that is needed. So with that, I just say thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, and we very much look forward to continuing and expanding our partnership with your nations and communities. That's it for me, Adriana.
Thank you, Scott. And thank you for flipping over to the next slide. I will be handing it over to the Deputy Director for the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative with the California Department of Technology, Mark Monroe.
Yes, thank you, Scott and Adriana. Good morning to all of our participants. I'm Mark Monroe, the Deputy Director for the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative program here at CDT. You can go to the next slide here. As has been noted, the 2021 and 2022 budget packages have provided a total of $3.8 billion in primarily federal American Rescue Plan Act or ARPA funds for CDT to develop a statewide middle mile network along the state highway system to connect the state's unserved and underserved communities under that broader broadband for all effort that Scott talked about. This is in addition to the $2.75 billion that the package provided to support these last mile connectivity efforts, as has been noted. Success of the MMBI depends heavily on Caltrans doing the pre-construction work, such as permitting and design, as well as construction, contracting, and project oversight during construction. Based on a robust public input process, CDT worked with the Public Utilities Commission and a third-party administrator, Golden State Net, to develop the map we see here, which reflects an MMBI network development along 10,000 miles of Caltrans overall 15,000 miles. So 2/3 of the total statewide network there. A few challenges that we had to address or are in the process of addressing. First of all, cost. Based on estimates, the $3.8 billion provided is now available for the project. While significant, is not expected to be enough funding for the state to construct the entire network. Similarly, in terms of the schedule, the federal timeframes relative to ARPA funds are not consistent with the way that Caltrans would normally approach its transportation projects. For these federal funds, they have to be under contract by 2024 with all of the work completed by this end of December 2026. So to mitigate these challenges, we anticipate IRU leases of existing infrastructure will be needed. And CDT is currently assessing the availability and affordability of existing infrastructure for lease, since it remains our goal to reach all 10,000 miles identified. To meet the federal timeframes, it was important following completion of the map to have Caltrans begin its permitting and design work as early as possible on all of the potential miles, which is why we worked to release the full 10,000 mile map this past May. And we have also been working with Caltrans to find ways to expedite its state and federal permitting efforts to move this along. The MMBI project is intended to connect unserved and underserved communities throughout the state. And we're happy to have the opportunity to meet today to discuss the potential benefits of the MMBI and Broadband for All efforts to California's tribal communities, and to talk through the approaches to system development in particular as it relates to the tribal lands. We can move on to the next slide here. As Chief Deputy Director Johnson noted, system construction has already begun in San Diego County and Poway this last October. This is an example of an early dig smart opportunities that Caltrans has been exploring, where fiber infrastructure can be added to existing transportation projects. But more broadly, we wanted to talk through the primary construction approaches job order contracting and CMGC here. So relative to how Caltrans would normally do a construction project, they would first design it, and then they would go out to bid, and then and then following that up with construction. That doesn't fit within the federal timeframes, and so two approaches that SB 156, the enabling legislation, allowed were CMGC, a construction manager general contractor, and job order contracting. And so for CMGC, that is where Caltrans brings on, as part of the initial construction contract, construction manager to help design the project, to make sure that it's designed in a way that's going to meet the schedule and address any specific challenges that are expected along the way. And so Caltrans is using this for areas in particular where we expect construction to be more challenging, or permitting to be more of a challenge. And then there's job order contracting. This is where the state goes out to bid for a given segment. When we look at the broader network, it's the 10,000 mile network. It's divided up into 5 major regions. And so we did a job order contract for each region, so did a bid solicitation, and we're in the process of reviewing the bids that were submitted. The idea is to have to be able to identify where all the possible construction locations are. And then we will, based on the bids, we'll select contractors and then issue work authorizations as the permitting and design work are completed. So it really extends the amount of time we have to be able to build, and allows us to move segments to construction as they are ready. You can jump to the next slide here. CDT and Caltrans are currently reviewing bids from several major contract solicitations that I've noted that were all released towards the end of 2022. We talked first about the RFI squared. This is really, when we look at building the network or developing a network, there's this general model that Caltrans is going to build as much as possible. But given that we're going to need to find these other alternatives, we went out for an open bid solicitation to look for where could we lease, where are there opportunities to partner with existing with industry on existing planned projects, to do joint construction or to purchase existing infrastructure, as well as to identify areas where we can co-locate the electronics and the servers that we'll need for the network. So we're in the process. We've received 22 different bids on those, so we're in the process of going through those. And currently, similarly, as I mentioned, we have gone out for more than 5,100 miles of the job order contracts. We've received bids on those, or are also evaluating those. And then thirdly, we'll note that regarding the CMGC contracts that Caltrans has done, there's more than 1,700 miles of those that have been received and are currently being evaluated. So we're definitely moving the project along and trying to get to the point where we can start construction, because we have these tight federal timelines that we're working around. You go to the next slide. So here you can see what Caltrans has identified in terms of where the system is expected to be located. While it is intended to connect communities, it doesn't necessarily go through all of the communities. We want all of the state's tribal communities to know where the network will be and how it can benefit these tribal communities. Next, Caltrans is going to be talking us through its process and working with the tribes in developing the project. But before we move on, if we can jump to the next slide here. Here you can see the schedule that we use at the Middle Mile Advisory Committee. This is a meeting that's now being held quarterly, so our next one will be the third week in April. And we really encourage everyone to attend these quarterly MMAC meetings. They're held virtually, and it's a good way to really track the progress on this project. When I talk through the bids that we just discussed, that's all going to be evaluated as part of an optimization process. This timeline here, CDT shows, or CDT will be working with Caltrans and Golden State Net to take those bids and optimize the network and make key decisions based on those bids that we've received, to use the available funding as effectively as possible to bring middle mile connection to the state's unserved and underserved communities. And with that, and before we turn it over to Caltrans, we'll open this up to any questions.
Thanks, Mark. And again, if folks have questions, you're more than welcome. And you see the Q&A feature down at the bottom. Please feel free to post those questions or raise your hand, and we will call on you. So I am not seeing any hands raised or questions posted. So with that, if we can go to the next slide, perfect, thank you. We are going to hand this over to Caltrans, the Assistant Deputy Director for the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative, Janice Benton, and the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative Program Director, Hardeep Takar. Janice?
All right, good morning. Thank you, Adriana. Like Adriana said, my name is Janice Benton. I'm the Assistant Deputy Director for the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative at Caltrans. And I'll be joining with me as Hardeep Takar, the Program Director here at Caltrans for the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative. So next slide. So it's a pleasure to be here to talk about the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative and the ambitious effort to promote the digital equity and inclusion. Today is about sharing the information about this opportunity and making sure you have all the background on the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative and sharing items such as what is the project, what is the type of work, and how can you engage. This initiative is a significant undertaking, and as many as the speakers have already mentioned, we'll need the partnerships of all the stakeholders and parties to meet this substantial challenge. So next slide. And as has been shared, the full system design map for the broadband middle mile network includes 10,000 miles of proposed build that spans the entire state. And to put this in perspective, Caltrans owns and operates about 15,000 miles. And so this initiative is really adding broadband to almost 2/3 of the state highway system. And through this initiative, we're taking a comprehensive and long-term approach to tackling the broadband infrastructure deficiencies, connecting Californians and meeting the broadband infrastructure needs. So next slide. And as Mr. Monroe mentioned, the Broadband Middle Mile Initiative has a very aggressive timeline to meet the 10,000 mile network goal and ensure we're maximizing the use of the federal dollars. So the program is funded through the Federal American Rescue Plan with the Treasury Department that funds that requires, and with these funds requires the dollars to be encumbered by December 2024 and all projects closed out with all funds used by December 2026. So we're working closely with the California Department of Technology, the lead agency and project owner, to ensure we're prepared to navigate any of these challenges or potential issues. Now I will hand it over to Hardeep Takar, our program director, to share more details on how we plan to deliver the projects.
Thank you, Janice. Good morning, everyone. I will be covering the details on the project development process. Again, as Janice mentioned, I'm Hardeep Takar. I'm serving as the program director for the Middle Mile Broadband Network Program for Caltrans. The Broadband Middle Mile Initiative is an example of how Caltrans is not doing business as usual. We have been given the flexibility to accomplish the 10,000 mile build goal. And in the standard project delivery process, which is linear, with each phase being allocated and then completed prior to the beginning of the next phase. Next slide, please. As you can see here, instead of the linear process, we are streamlining the delivery process to create efficiencies in design, permitting, contracting, which allows these pre-construction processes, including environmental, final design, and right-of-way approvals, to be completed concurrently. Our goal is to avoid and minimize impacts to environmental resources and staying effectively engaged with tribal regional governments to exercise avoidance and minimization measures, and also consider mitigation for unavoidable impacts during the project development process. This will involve using construction means and methods that I will cover in the next few slides. Next slide, please. So we do, Caltrans has developed plans, details, and specifications to install conduit and fiber optic cable that have been developed and cover the following construction methods, including plowing, trenching, and trenchless installation construction means and methods. And typically 4 2-inch or 3 2-inch conduit configurations will be installed in trenches that are 6 to 12 inches wide and 24 to 42 inches in depth, depending on the site conditions. And details have been developed for work, including trenching on roadside, trenching in pavement and shoulder, and plowing. And this work will include building 21,000 walls every 2,500 feet, approximately, to pull fiber along the state highway system right away, and building splice walls located every 15,000 feet along the network to serve as connection points to allow local access to broadband providers. We will also be building more than 200 concrete network hub shelters for fiber optic cable signal regeneration, which will be strategically positioned every 50 miles along the state highway system right away, where buried fiber optic cable is transferred above ground to connect with devices to boost and enhance data signals. Next slide, please. In the next few slides, we will be covering the description, typical applications, and operations for the construction means and methods. In this case, plowing involves using a vibratory plow to create a narrow slit in soil as the plow moves quickly, resulting in minimal soil disturbance and requiring an effortless cleanup following the operation. Applications will typically include areas where installation is required in a soil surface that includes an uneven, wet, dry terrain. We have a tight schedule, a long haul, and will require restoration following completion of the work. Next slide, please. Traditional trenching is common for cross-country installations, and it may affect traffic movement and is slower than plowing. Trench and pavement will be allowed in narrow trenches on the shoulder and pavement to overcome width and depth limitations encountered at locations where we need to avoid impacts to environmental resources and overcome right-of-way restrictions, again on a case-by-case basis. Next slide, please. This slide illustrates micro-trenching. It's also a type of trench and pavement. Micro-trenching in asphalt, concrete pavement, shoulders, and travelway will be explored and approved under limited circumstances on a case-by-case basis to avoid, again, environmentally sensitive areas where off-pavement construction means and methods are determined infeasible. This will involve cutting a narrow trench, typically 3 inches to 6 inches wide, into asphalt or concrete pavement. And trench depths typically will be below the upper layer, but shallower than most utilities. The operation will involve using vacuum excavation units to simultaneously remove the soils. And this method is primarily used to install fiber optic cable. Next slide, please. Horizontal drilling applications may include long hauls over most terrains, including rocky ground conditions, overpasses, embankments, side hills, and river crossings. The operations will need to consider entrance and exit pits, pilot hole, reaming, and swab passes, and a sound curtain for noise mitigation, and site restoration will also be required when the work is completed. Next slide, please. We will also be considering stitch boring, a type of horizontal drilling operation, which may also be utilized. This uses pneumatic piercing tools to shoot from one small pit to the next over short distances. This slide lists the typical equipment and materials used in the horizontal directional drilling operations. Next slide, please. For trenchless installation using jack and bore operations, typical applications include roadways and railroad crossings when a casing is required. These are locations where horizontal drilling is not feasible, but similar to horizontal drilling, operations will need to consider entrance exit pits, pilot hole, reaming, and swab passes, pipe casing, specifically in this case, and site restoration will also be required when the work is completed. Again, we appreciate the opportunity to share information with you about the Broadband Middle Mile Initiative and the construction means and methods. And at this point, we'll be able to take any questions. I will pass it back to Adriana. Thank you.
Thank you, Hardeep, and thank you, Janice. So if anybody has any questions, please raise your hand, or if you would like to post in the chat. So I do see that there was a question posted in the chat regarding Mark, and I don't know if you want to comment on this one. There was a presentation about a slide that indicated 0 miles for District 6. And what does that mean? And so, so Mark, I will hand that over to you, but I think I do want to make sure that the middle mile will be coming to District 6. And I believe, you know, and as I understand it, while the middle mile is not going through tribal lands, there are ancestral lands, and there will continue to be project level consultation and partnership as we deliver the middle mile projects in District 6. Mark?
Yes, thank you. I'm trying to, as we speak here, trying to pull up our map. I believe this goes through all the districts, and so I'm not certain what was being looked at there, but all the districts are covered with our network. So I'm trying to.
Mark, this is Robert Gomez. I pose that question. You had on there all the districts that were being affected by the middle mile trenching and so on and so forth. But on District 6, you did not have any miles included in there. And I was curious.
I see.
But I think Adriana has answered my question in the sense there are some miles slated for District 6, even though it's not on tribal land. And maybe that was a distinction that you were referring to, tribal land versus cultural land.
Exactly. Yes. No, I appreciate the question, and it's a really good clarification. The map that I was showing you there was what Caltrans identified as the route miles that were going specifically crossing the tribal reservation land. And so, yeah, so District 6 did not have any miles that were actually crossing the land. This kind of goes to where we're trying to connect everybody, but we don't necessarily cross all of the tribal communities.
Okay, we have three tribal allotments right off of Highway 178. The furthest distance being maybe 3 miles from 178. Do you take the broadband to the tribal land, or do you stop there at 178?
Yeah, so in terms of, yeah, it's an important clarification. On the MMBI, we hold to the state highway system. That's why that's where we have the authority to build is along the state highway route. So anywhere where that route crosses or gets close to the tribes, that's really our goal is to be able to build to all those areas. And then when we talk about the last mile funding that's being discussed, or that Scott and others have talked about, that's the funding that would be used to build back to the middle mile.
All right, thank you.
And Robert, thank you as well for coming off mute to further clarify your question. I really appreciate that. And let's see, I'm not seeing any other questions posted in the Q&A. I don't see hands raised. So I am going to, if we can advance the slides, I'm going to hand this over to Catherine Rose, the Office Chief for Headquarters Cultural Studies Office, and Sarah Allred, the statewide Native American Coordinator, who are going to talk about our environmental and cultural focus as we work to build the network as I think CPUC and CDT develop that map for us. Catherine, Sarah?
Thanks, Adriana. Yeah, Good morning and welcome. We know, your time is valuable and we really appreciate all of you joining us today. So as Adriana said, my name is Catherine Rose. I'm the acting office chief for the Cultural Studies Office in Caltrans headquarters, Division of Environmental Analysis. And the Cultural Studies Office is responsible for developing, implementing, and monitoring cultural resource management for the department. And I'm going to let Sarah introduce herself. Sarah.
I'm Sarah Allred. I'm with the Native American Cultural Studies branch at Caltrans headquarters, Division of Environmental Analysis and Cultural Studies Office. I work on programs and policies related to Caltrans consultation with tribal governments, and I also administer the Cultural Studies Subcommittee to the Native American Advisory Committee. It's great to be here today, and thanks everyone for taking the time to join us. Catherine and I are going to be sharing this presentation today to talk about cultural and environmental studies for the Middle Mile projects in the districts. And so I will turn it back over to Catherine, and I will chime in a little bit later. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Next slide, please. Okay. So the previous presentations provided an overview of Broadband for All in California, what the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative is, and Caltrans' role in the project delivery process. And in this presentation, we're going to focus on the environmental and cultural resource studies process and Caltrans' consultation with tribes in that context. And this map that you see here provides an overview of the 12 Caltrans districts relative to the statewide Middle Mile network. And obviously, tribal ancestral areas do not necessarily coincide with district or political boundaries. So tribes may be working with one or more districts depending on your individual areas of concern. And each district is responsible for the design, environmental review, and compliance, permitting, and construction of the Middle Mile broadband projects in their respective areas. And each district has its own unique Middle Mile broadband delivery challenges, depending on factors such as topography, the urban or rural nature of the setting, and types of environmental sensitivities. Next slide, please. So also, as mentioned earlier in the earlier presentations, the delivery of the Middle Mile broadband network is being accelerated, and design will be environmentally driven to promote avoidance of resources. This means that the early identification of sensitive cultural and environmental areas is a key objective in the design and delivery of the Middle Mile broadband projects. And even though the delivery process is being accelerated, Caltrans is still responsible for complying with all state and federal environmental laws and procedures, including outreach and consultation with the culturally affiliated California Native American tribes. The Begin Environmental milestone marks the point at which Caltrans formally initiates environmental studies for an individual project, including the initiation of outreach to culturally affiliated tribes. And Caltrans will conduct outreach to both federally recognized and non-federally recognized tribes. Initial outreach efforts in the districts will be directed to tribal leadership and the tribe's designated cultural environmental experts. And depending on ancestral territories, tribes should be receiving and or will receive communications from one or more districts seeking consultation regarding any cultural and environmental concerns related to specific Middle Mile broadband project areas. And tribes may be receiving communication in the form of emails, letters, phone calls, and meetings. And because Middle Mile broadband projects are being accelerated and prioritized at Caltrans, there is the potential that districts might be asking for faster turnarounds on consultation requests. This will help to inform design on avoidance measures for cultural and environmental resources. Next slide, please. Each of the Middle Mile projects in the district will be assessed regarding their potential to affect the environment. As is typical for Caltrans projects, cultural resources studies will follow a general sequence that involves the identification of sensitive resources and an evaluation of their significance in close consultation with culturally affiliated tribes. If significant tribal cultural resources and or sensitive areas are identified within a project area, Caltrans environmental and design staff will work with the consulting tribes to avoid those areas to the fullest extent possible. The various design options that Hardeep presented earlier, such as plowing, trenching in the pavement or shoulders, micro-trenching, trenchless installation, and horizontal directional drilling, provide some insight into potential engineering solutions to avoiding and minimizing impacts to resources. If there are circumstances in which the avoidance of a resource is not feasible, Caltrans consults with the tribes to minimize impacts and develop a suitable and appropriate mitigation plan that is reflective of the nature and scope of the impacts. Minimization efforts may also include micro-trenching, horizontal directional boring, trenchless installation, and plowing. And each project and circumstance are different, so the nature of mitigation for an individual resource is based on consultation with the affected tribes. As mentioned earlier, since the design of the middle mile broadband is environmentally led, and early identification of sensitive cultural and environmental areas is a key objective. This can be facilitated by good communication and coordination between tribes and Caltrans environmental staff. Next slide.
All right, thank you, Catherine. All right, so given that the design of the middle mile projects is being heavily guided by the environmental, the identification and avoidance of cultural and environmental resources, we just wanted to call attention to some of the information that may be useful for early coordination and communication among tribes and Caltrans staff. First is the Native American Cultural Studies branch webpage, which sort of provides a hub of information for tribal governments, including links to the department's statewide tribal relations org chart and the statewide contact list for district Native American coordinators. Next slide, please. So this statewide contact list here is for the District Native American Coordinators, otherwise known as DNACs. These are the points of contact for tribes regarding cultural and environmental concerns or issues in each of the 12 districts. We have had a lot of staff changes and movement lately, so be sure to check the list on the website regularly for updates. I know that many of the tribal, cultural, and environmental experts out there already have well-established relationships with their District Native American coordinators, but for those who are not familiar, the District Native American coordinators are available to assist and or guide tribes or other partners to proper sources of information within the organization, depending on the nature of their concern. And as always, another point of contact for environmental and cultural resource concerns includes those of us in the headquarters Cultural Studies Office and Native American Cultural Studies branch. Next slide, please. And the Tribal Relations org chart here provides a broader view of all designated tribal relations staff in the department, as well as Caltrans executive leadership, both at headquarters and in the districts. For those who are not familiar, there are two functional divisions of the Tribal Relations Program within the department, and that's the Transportation Planning Division and the Environmental Analysis Division. We all communicate and coordinate, and any of these staff can assist with tribal government inquiries. And if there are broad issues that cannot be addressed at the staff or district level, tribal governments are encouraged to work through their districts and or headquarters tribal relations staff to seek diplomatic discussions and resolutions with Caltrans executive leadership and managers as needed. Next slide, please. Another important resource is the Caltrans Environmental GIS Viewer. This is a straightforward interactive map tool that allows users to compare a variety of environmental, political, and infrastructure layers for the entire state, including the state highway system and the planned 10,000-mile middle mile network. These layers can be accessed via the tabs and subtabs on the right there. And users can easily zoom in to examine their own unique areas of the state or areas of concern relative to the middle mile network and other aspects of the environment. So this GIS viewer can really be a valuable communication tool for tribal, cultural, and environmental experts who are consulting with Caltrans on the middle mile projects, particularly as it relates to identifying resources and strategizing avoidance of those sensitive resources. So the value of this viewer is that it doesn't require a project-specific notification. Anyone can access the viewer at any time to inspect their areas of concern relative to the Middle Mile network map. And if needed, you can work with your DNAC, District Native American Coordinator, or other district cultural and environmental staff to flag these areas of avoidance and sensitivity ahead of time. I don't mean physically flag them, but alert people of areas of sensitivity. In earlier sessions, there were some questions about tribal monitoring for Middle Mile projects in the districts. And so this viewer provides opportunities for tribes to identify those areas for which tribal cultural monitoring may be necessary to help with planning those monitoring needs. So if you haven't had an opportunity to visit the GIS viewer, we encourage you to explore that for your specific areas of concern relative to the Middle Mile projects. And don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or need assistance using the GIS viewer. Next slide, please. So lastly, as mentioned earlier, even though the Middle Mile projects are being expedited, Caltrans will comply, as always, with all state and federal environmental and historic preservation laws, policy, procedures. And Volume 2 of Caltrans Standard Environmental Reference focuses on how Caltrans conducts its cultural resource studies, including procedures and expectations for consultation with Native American tribes. As you can see, there are 6 chapters as well as a number of exhibits that accompany and complement each chapter. This is an excellent go-to resource for gaining more familiarity with the overall cultural studies process, what to expect. And of course, we're here to help if you have any questions about the process. Next slide, please. And then on that note, we would just like to leave you with some of the key contacts who can assist with any inquiries related to environmental or cultural resource concerns for the Middle Mile Broadband Network projects. They will be able to assist you and or connect you with those within the department or the districts who can assist. And so with that, I would just like to thank you all again for taking the time to be here with us and listen to this presentation. We hope this information is helpful, and we're happy to take any questions or comments that you may have regarding Caltrans environmental review process for the delivery of the Middle Mile projects. All right, thank you again, everyone.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Catherine. If there are any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or post in the Q&A, and I'll pause for just a moment. Perfect, and thank you for the applause, Robert. I do see a hand from David Fine. David?
Hi, thank you. David Fine from the Chumash tribe in Santa Ynez, Santa Barbara County. We just have a quick question. There's a lot of contacts out there. Who's our best contact to discuss asset sharing and connection to the network? Is there someone we can go to directly? Those are the 2 things we're interested in.
So I think Catherine, Sarah, I think you have more of would have a better clarification and response on that.
I guess I would say that segues into the next presentation perhaps, but sorry, Catherine, go ahead.
I was just going to ask for some clarification. If you're thinking about like how the tribe can kind of tie into the Middle Mile, or are you looking for funds for, maybe you can clarify.
Yeah, so we have some assets that are probably very useful for the Middle Mile network, a class 3 data center. We have fiber running between some of our operations, but there are other areas where we don't have fiber, to get fiber to the home for residents, for instance. That would be a great plan. And then how do we connect to the middle mile network. It goes
Yeah.
right by us.
Yeah,
This is
yeah, as
Matt
Sarah
Rand.
mentioned, the next
Matt.
presentation is going to be
Yeah,
about the
Catherine.
sorry.
Catherine, let me just jump in for a second. I just wanted to say, this is Matt Rantanen with GSN, third-party advisor to CDT. And that would be the best thing to do there would just be get on a call with myself and Eric Hunsinger, and we can walk through the specifics on the map with you. And you can identify your needs in that region related to the middle mile opportunity, and we can record those and work with Caltrans on that afterwards. So let's schedule a meeting. My information will be coming up in the next section, and please just email me and we'll get that going.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. And Robert, I see a hand. I see a hand from you.
Yeah, I didn't want to clap, but I wanted really to raise my hand.
Okay.
But anyway, my question is, if in fact on your mapping, cultural mapping, you have an area or the area that of concern to us is not on the map, we have the ability to add that to the mapping and ensure that there's a cultural monitor at that area?
Yeah, my response would be to work with your district Native American coordinator. I believe, did you say you were Chumash tribe?
No, Tabatalabal from the Kern River Valley on
Oh, okay,
178.
okay. Yeah, so I believe that would be Christina McDonald to coordinate with.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, Robert, we can provide the list of DNACs again, maybe send that to you directly if that's helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Seeing no more hands or questions, if we can go to the next slide, we're going to take about a 5-minute break. And then move on to a discussion about last mile. So it is 11:22 right now. So if folks want to be back about 11:27, we will resume the engagement session. Thank you. Welcome back. Hope everybody got a few moments to stretch and stand up a little bit. And we will continue to move forward with our presentations. And we are going to shift from discussion and conversation about the middle mile broadband network, which Caltrans is handling the construction, to discussion about last mile, which is under the purview of the California Public Utilities Commission. So I'm going to hand this over to Rachel Peterson, Executive Director of the CPUC, and Matt Rantanen, who is a Senior Advisor for Golden State Network, which is the third-party administrator of the network. Rachel?
Thank you, Adriana. Hello again, everyone. I'll be starting off with a presentation this morning on last mile programs. And then, as Adriana said, I will hand it to Matt Rantanen with Golden State Network for his comments and for our Q&A. Next slide, please. Our overview for today is on this slide. I am very pleased to be here with the CPUC's Tribal Advisor, Ken Holbrook. He's going to speak first about a range of tribal work that's going on at the CPUC. And then I'll take the mic back and talk about 5 CPUC programs that are each key pieces for connecting last mile broadband projects with tribes. And for resources and contacts, we have our email address on every slide here. You can always reach out to Ken Holbrook with questions. And Karen Eckers-Lee, our staff subject matter expert, is also here with me for questions. Our staff email for all broadband questions is statewidebroadband@cpuc.ca.gov. And next slide, please. And can I invite Ken to present? Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Hi, everyone. I'm Kenneth Holbrook. I serve as the California Public Utilities Commission's Tribal Advisor. My contact information is here on this slide, and I'm very pleased to be with all of you today. This resource slide gives you the links to our Office of Tribal Advisor and to the Tribal Liaison. Our tribal consultation policy has been in place since 2018. It provides a framework for all of our divisions to establish and maintain effective relationships with tribes while respecting sovereignty. The CPUC's Office of Tribal Advisor works to provide tribes with information about our programs. We consult with tribes on the development of policies and work to improve relations among tribal governments, the CPUC, and its regulated entities. The Tribal Land Transfer Policy promotes the transfer of land from investor-owned utilities to Native American tribes with a historical interest in the land. When a utility begins a process of selling or donating land, the policy creates an expectation that the utility will work with the California Native American Heritage Commission to identify any tribes whose ancestral territory the land is on or adjacent to the property for sale. Once a utility identifies those interested tribe or tribes, the company is expected to negotiate a transfer to the tribe before putting the land on the open market. This policy, which the CPUC developed after comment from utilities and tribes, furthers the CPUC's goals of recognizing and respecting tribal sovereignty and of returning tribal lands to their rightful owners. We have an open proceeding to further improve these guidelines, and many of you are participating in that proceeding. We encourage all of you to do so. Please reach out to tribaladvisor@cpuc.ca.gov. I'll say that one more time, tribaladvisor@cpuc.ca.gov. For further information about participating in that proceeding and the many proceedings that we have open at the CPUC, or in general, any questions that you have regarding tribal affairs at CPUC, I'm always available to you. So enjoy the rest of the meeting, and back over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Ken. Can we go to the next slide, please? And I just want to note that here we have listed the programs and policies that Ken spoke about, and we've linked them. So if you have a copy of the slides, there should be links. Those links should be active and go to our website. All right, next slide, please. Now here, we just wanted to show you an overview of all of the different grant and funding programs that are related to improving communications access and infrastructure. I'm going to talk in detail about the 5 that are highlighted, but just wanted to show a larger picture of everything that's available. Next slide, please. The first program I'll talk about is our Tribal Technical Assistance. What the CPUC heard in countless public hearings, workshops, and consultation was the problem of capacity within a tribal organization to work on communications issues. We heard that sometimes or often there just aren't enough people or time to perform the research or study work that you need for such projects. And so we designed our grant program for you to hire consultants to help you answer questions about your next steps for improving communications on tribal lands. The program has assisted 40 tribes with over 60 projects to date. We have broad eligibility for this fund, so it's inclusive of California tribes with or without federal recognition. The grants are up to $150,000 per year per tribe. We've listed our 4 application windows on the slide and a link to the page on our website with more information about it. Next slide, please. We have another local technical assistance program as well. The broadband package tasked the CPUC with awarding $50 million in technical assistance grants to entities to help them prepare to provide broadband service in their communities. Public entities are broadly eligible. This means tribes, cities, and counties. Individual grants, are to be no more than $1 million per applicant. And if the request is $500,000 or less, there's an expedited process. Tribes have a set aside of 5 million within this fund, and there's about 3 million left in that set aside. These funds are for a range of pre-project costs to deploy last mile broadband infrastructure, and we've listed types of eligible costs here. We began receiving applications in August 2022. They are currently being accepted on a rolling basis, and we encourage you to think about your pre-construction broadband work needs and how much of those needs could be supported by a technical assistance grant. Just as examples, we have recently granted a Yurok tribe local technical assistance application, and 3 additional ones from tribes are being evaluated by our staff right now. There's a county by county dashboard that we've linked in the deck as well, so that folks can see all of the grant activity to date. All right, next slide, please. The federal funding account is the large, important account. It's our biggest infrastructure funding account. And under the statute that set up the Broadband for All program, the commission is directed to implement a program to expeditiously connect unserved and underserved areas. The law also directs the CPUC to split the $2 billion in grants for last mile broadband infrastructure projects between urban and rural areas evenly, with $1 billion to each. We're directed to allocate $5 million to each county first, and above that, we're directed to allocate the federal funding account funds based on the proportion of households without access to broadband internet access service with at least 100 megabits per second download speeds. The data we're presently using on broadband internet access service is data that was identified and validated by the Commission during our most recent broadband data collection in July 2021. We have recently published a map that includes unserved and underserved locations, which are the areas eligible for funding from the federal funding account. The map does include a layer labeled as priority areas. These areas depict examples of areas that could be used as project areas in applications for funding. And I'd like to note that despite the label of these areas as priority, they do not reflect, and we fully recognize, they do not reflect the full universe of areas that we anticipate will be funded. In addition, the priority areas are a preliminary draft, and we anticipate that they'll be revised as we continue to receive public comments. Next slide, please. The California Advanced Services Fund has been in existence for over a decade, and the broadband grants made under this program have supported a range of investments. Since 2008, the program has awarded $327 million in grants for 102 projects. The suite of programs, which was also updated and reinvigorated by legislation, are shown here on this slide. Adoption and digital equity grants are funds for public entities and community-based organizations to help people connect to, understand, and use the internet. Public housing and low-income communities grants provide free connections to low-income households. The consortia account funds are for regional broadband consortia, who are experts who help service providers and communities access grants. And then finally, infrastructure grants pay for infrastructure in areas without access. This fund has different eligibility criteria from the federal funding account that I was speaking about on the earlier slide. And next slide, please. The last program I'll talk about today is the Loan Loss Reserve Program. The program assists local governments and nonprofits in securing financing so that they may build out their own last mile broadband infrastructure. The fund essentially provides collateral to better enable borrowing rates, improved borrowing rates and terms for bonds that are issued to deploy broadband. It's envisioned to support broadband anywhere in the state, regardless of served or unserved status. This is a program that is still mid-flight. We are writing the program rules now, and our next step will be to issue that proposed set of rules for public comment and review. All right, next slide, please. And that concludes my formal remarks. We wanted to close with this slide of a photograph of one of our California Advanced Services Fund grantees with their service provider partners. These are representatives from the Hoopa Valley Public Utilities District and Hunter Fiber Communications. I do love this photo because it shows folks where the infrastructure exists deep in the belly of a building, managing that broadband infrastructure that is essential to modern life. Our key emails are on the slide one more time. Kenneth Holbrook is Tribal Advisor at cpuc.ca.gov. And for any and all questions about our broadband programs, statewide broadband at cpuc.ca.gov. And now I'll turn it over to Matt Rantanen with Golden State Networks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I'm kind of nestled into this spot in the lineup because a lot of the conversations that I have individually with tribes are specific about how to connect to the middle mile, which was asked previously, which is very important, and I'm glad that question was asked. You know, doing outreach as the third-party advisor to the California Department of Technology and this whole process of building the middle mile, I'm engaging with the 109 tribes and assessing their needs based on what is presented in one-on-one consultation meetings about connectivity. I have a lot of information about the last mile, and I, have a lot of information about the federal grant process, as well as some of the other funding opportunities. So the discussion often leads into last mile or the integration of last mile to this middle mile network. So that's why I kind of get nestled in this process during this timeline in the program. So, my information is here. If we haven't spoken yet, please reach out. I'm looking forward to meeting with you and understanding your tribe's needs and aligning you with the middle mile opportunity and talking about that connector piece if you're not exactly on the route and what those solutions might look like for your unique situation. The goal is to have a conversation with each of the tribes so that we understand specifically where the opportunity lies. And so please email and we'll get a conversation going as soon as you are available to sort that out. So thank you for your time.
And next slide. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation on last mile. Let's go ahead and open it up for questions. And again, please feel free to raise your hand, or if you see the Q&A and you would like to post a question in there, you are welcome to do so. Okay, well, I am not seeing any hands or Q&As posted, but know that there was a lot of contact information shared this morning. So there are definitely folks who you can reach out to, whether it is connecting with one of Caltrans's, one of the folks with Caltrans on the Middle Mile project, or connecting with Kenneth Holbrook with CPUC, or Matt Rantanen with Golden State Net. I think there's a lot of folks to help you get the information that you need. So with that, I want to take a moment and really express appreciation to everyone for joining us this afternoon or this morning. It's not quite afternoon yet, but joining us this morning. And as previously mentioned, we will be sharing the presentation and a recording of today's session. But please, if questions come up following the session or later this afternoon, please feel free to reach out to us. But we look forward to partnering with you as we build this critical infrastructure across the state. So thank you very much. And I will wish you all an early happy Friday. And I hope everybody has good weekends. So thank you.